Welcome back to everyone, and today we have got a story. I will let you hear it, and as usual, I will be reading it and giving my opinion. I hope you do the same comments below. Without further ado, let's jump right into it.
My English teacher made us sign contracts for total silence in class, then gave me detention for whispering to help a kid having a panic attack while she graded papers. I was in science class when I grabbed what I thought was my granola bar from my bag. One bite, and I knew something was wrong. The taste. Peanut butter. My friend's protein bar must have gotten mixed up with mine when we studied together. I need the emergency EpiPen. I gasped, already feeling my throat tighten. I just ate peanuts. The substitute teacher looked up from her desk where she was eating from her own bag of peanuts. Don't be dramatic. Allergies are all in your head. No, you don't understand. My tongue was already swelling. I'd left my EpiPen at home, thinking I'd be fine since every classroom had emergency ones. Please, the med cabinet, sit down. She stood up and walked to the cabinet, but instead of opening it, she leaned against it. You know what my parents did when I claimed I was allergic to cats? They locked me in a room with 3 of them. By morning, I was cured. Katie jumped up and ran toward the cabinet. She's not faking. She needs help now. The sub blocked her. The only thing killing her is her own mind. Then she did something I'll never forget. She walked to the door, turned the deadbolt, and pocketed the key. No one leaves until she admits she's faking it. This victim mentality is destroying your generation. Call 911, someone yelled, reaching for their phone. Phones, in the box, now! The sub grabbed the collection box. Or you're all suspended. My throat felt like someone was tightening a belt around it. 6 minutes. That's all I had before the swelling became irreversible. The number my doctor made me memorize. That's when my ex Daniel decided to chime in. She pulled this same drama last year. The sub smiled at him. See? Even he knows you're faking. She walked back to my desk with her bag of peanuts. My parents proved allergies are psychological when I was 5. She grabbed a handful and slowly, deliberately crushed them over my desk. Exposure therapy. This is for your own good. The dust fell everywhere. Blood started dripping from my nose. My lips were swelling. Katie screamed, "Look at her!" The sub shoved Katie back down. Psychosomatic reaction. She believes she's dying, so her body mimics it. That's when Tommy touched his neck. And I guess he was allergic too, because his eyes started swelling shut. I can't see! I can't see! Everyone lost it. Kids were dumping entire backpacks on the floor, throwing contents everywhere. Does anyone have an EpiPen? Sarah was sobbing, using her shirt to wipe blood from my nose. Please don't die. Please don't die. Jack ran to the door and started pulling on it. Open this right now, please. The sub laughed. Sit down or you're expelled. Jack kept yanking on the door handle, the whole frame rattling. Help! Somebody! Other kids joined him, pounding on the door with their fists. Through the door window, Mr. Peterson from next door looked in. The sub stepped in front of the window, blocking his view, and gave a thumbs up before closing the blind. He walked away. This is kidnapping! Katie screamed. 3 minutes left. Blood dripped from my nose onto my desk. Tommy was clawing at his throat. Lisa was in the corner vomiting from pure panic. 2 girls were huddled together crying. Some kids just sat frozen at their desks, unable to move. The sub actually laughed. Oscar-worthy performance, though a bit over the top with the fake blood. My situationship Jack tried to give me mouth-to-mouth while I was still conscious and choking. My ex Daniel tackled him to the ground. I know her better. Yeah, that's why you called her dramatic. Jack shot back. Look at this. Fighting over the attention seeker. The sub ate another peanut. This is exactly what she wanted. I could feel myself turning blue. Foam bubbled at the corners of my mouth. Katie smashed the med cabinet with the chair. The sub grabbed her wrist. Destruction of property. That's expulsion. She's dying. Mike tackled the sub from behind. You want to go to jail for assault? I'll press charges on all of you. I got out of my chair and couldn't even stand anymore. The fire extinguisher on the wall was my only thought. I literally had to crawl over on all fours just to get there. Look at her performance. The sub cackled, crawling for sympathy. My body didn't feel like it was mine anymore. 1 second, I was getting ready to throw the fire extinguisher at the door. The next, I was covering my face to stop the glass from getting in my eyes. Crash! The sub spun around. Vandalism! You're going to prison! I reached through, slicing my arm on the wire, fumbling for the deadbolt. Stop her! The sub screamed, but Mike and Katie held her back. I turned the lock. The door flew open. It collapsed in the hallway just as other teachers came running. Call 911! Someone screamed. The sub was still yelling from inside. They're all faking! This is mass hysteria! The paramedics said I was clinically dead for 3 minutes. They worked on me right there in the hallway while more ambulances arrived. Miss Blade was fired and blacklisted from every school in the area. Fast forward 2 weeks later. We were sitting in class when our teacher broke the news. After receiving his diagnosis of permanent partial blindness, Tommy had taken his own life. All thanks to Miss Blade. That's when I knew getting fired wasn't enough. We had to destroy her. The words hung in the air while everyone sat frozen at their desks. Katie's hand found mine under the table and squeezed so hard my knuckles cracked. Her eyes were red and puffy, but there was something else there too. Something hard and angry. The bell rang and kids started filing out, but we stayed in our seats until the room emptied. She leaned close and whispered that getting Miss Blade fired wasn't even close to enough. I nodded because my throat was too tight to speak. After class, I had to go straight to my follow-up appointment at the hospital. The doctor ran a scope down my throat and took pictures of the scarring. He showed me the images on his computer screen, pointing to the damaged tissue. My airways were permanently narrowed by 15%. He made me practice with my new EpiPen over and over, stabbing it into an orange until I got the motion right. 3 times he watched me do it before signing my discharge papers. Walking back through the main hallway at the school the next day, I saw Mr. Peterson man coming toward me. His face went white when he recognized me. He turned and practically ran into an empty classroom. I stood there with my fists clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms. He saw me dying through that window and just walked away. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from Katie. She was making a group chat with everyone from that classroom. Sarah joined first, then Mike, then Jack. Even Lisa, who threw up, joined. We needed to get our stories straight for what was coming. My mom drove me to the police station the next morning. The officer taking my statement kept making me repeat the part about the locked door. He wrote down every detail about the 6-minute timeline. 2 hours I sat in that uncomfortable plastic chair going over it again and again. He asked if I had any proof besides witness statements. Tommy's funeral was 3 days later in the school gym. Half our science class showed up, but the other half stayed away. His mom stood at the front holding his school photo and sobbing. After everyone left, I walked up to his picture display. I touched his photo and promised him that Miss Blade would really pay for this. By Monday, the whole school was talking, but not the way we expected. Some kids were saying it was all mass hysteria, and we overreacted to nothing. At lunch, this girl from another class said Tommy was being dramatic about his blindness. I threw my tray in the trash and left before I did something stupid. Jack found me after school by my locker looking uncomfortable. He kept apologizing for trying to give me mouth-to-mouth when I was still conscious. He said he panicked and didn't know what else to do. I told him it was okay, even though remembering his mouth on mine while I was choking made my skin crawl. That night, Daniel sent me this long, rambling message on Instagram. He was sorry, but also not really sorry, claiming he was trying to keep everyone calm. He said he still knew me better than anyone and was just trying to help. I blocked him after reading his last line about how we should talk in person. The school nurse called me down the next day to go over their new allergy action plan. She showed me the new EpiPen stations they installed in locked boxes throughout the building. Each one needed a special key to open. She gave me a laminated card with the locations marked, but I noticed the keys were only in the main office. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with an email from the school district, and I opened it while sitting on my bed, still feeling weak from everything. The subject line just said, "Important update regarding recent incident," and the whole thing was maybe 3 sentences about how Miss Blade had been terminated from her position and banned from working in any school in the state due to an incident involving student safety protocols. They didn't mention me dying for 3 minutes or Tommy going blind or anything real that happened. My mom read it over my shoulder and threw her phone across the room. Katie showed up at my house around 7 with this huge notebook and a folder full of papers and started spreading everything out on my kitchen table. She said we needed to write down every single thing we remembered about what happened and every symptom I was still having, because if we were really going to destroy Miss Blade, we needed evidence for more than just her getting fired. My hands were still shaking sometimes, and I got dizzy when I stood up too fast, and Katie wrote all of that down in her neat handwriting. The next morning, the school called and said Principal Barfield wanted to meet with me and my mom immediately about the situation. Talk about taking no peanuts allowed to a whole new level of wrong. This teacher just turned a science class into a horror movie where the villain eats snacks while kids literally die. We drove there, and he was sitting behind his desk with his hands folded looking all serious, and started talking about how we needed to handle this situation carefully and not make it public or cause unnecessary drama for the school. My mom stood up so fast her chair fell backward and asked him if he thought watching her daughter die for 3 minutes was unnecessary drama. He actually had the nerve to say the school had already taken appropriate action and we should move forward. 2 days later, a detective named Darren Boudreau called our house and said he'd been assigned to investigate potential criminal charges, including child endangerment and false imprisonment against Miss Blade. He came over that afternoon with a recorder and took my statement for almost 2 hours. And when I told him about her locking the door, he stopped writing and looked up and said that changed everything legally, because that made it false imprisonment on top of everything else. That night, I was trying to do homework when suddenly I couldn't breathe and felt like I was back on that classroom floor, crawling toward the door with my throat closing up. I grabbed a notebook and started writing down every single detail I could remember about those 6 minutes, because I needed to get it out of my head before it drove me crazy. I wrote about the taste of the peanut butter and the way the blood felt dripping from my nose and how the floor tiles felt cold under my hands when I was crawling. Katie organized a meeting at her house with everyone from our class who wanted to help, and we sat in her basement making a plan. We decided destroying Miss Blade meant 3 things had to happen, which were criminal charges that would put her in jail, and civil lawsuits that would take all her money, and making sure everyone everywhere knew exactly what she did, so she could never hurt another kid. Katie assigned Mike to research similar cases, and Sarah to collect medical records, and everyone got a job to do. My mom found this lawyer named Gray Bellamy, who specialized in the school negligence cases, and we met him in his office downtown, where he had all these awards on the wall. He explained that to win, we needed to prove the school knew, or should have known, Miss Blade was dangerous, which meant we had to get her employment records and any complaints from other schools. He said the discovery process would let us request all her files, and that's when we'd find out if there were warning signs the school ignored. I started seeing a therapist named Emmett Bloom twice a week because I was having panic attacks every time I smelled peanut butter or heard a door lock, who taught me these breathing exercises where I counted to 4 while breathing in and held it for 4 and breathed out for 4, and it actually helped a little bit. He told me what I went through was real trauma and my anger was completely justified and I shouldn't feel bad about my justice. A week later, this guy Gordon Bowles from the district's legal department scheduled interviews with all of us kids who were in the classroom that day. He came to the school and pulled us out of class one by one, but it was obvious he was just trying to protect the school from getting sued, because he kept asking these leading questions about whether we might have misunderstood what Miss Blade meant, or if maybe she was just trying to teach us a lesson about being prepared. He actually asked Katie if she thought Miss Blade might have been planning to open the cabinet after making her point, and Katie told him Miss Blade watched me turn blue and foam at the mouth, so what point was she trying to make exactly? Then this local reporter named Jasper Beckwith started calling everyone trying to get our side of the story for some investigation he was doing. Katie thought we should talk to him and get the truth out there, but Gray Bellamy told us to wait until he could find out what angle the reporter was taking, because sometimes they twist things to make victims look bad. 2 days later, I was sitting in Gray Bellamy's office downtown signing a stack of papers while he explained each one. He kept pointing to different sections about witness statements and the locked door detail while his assistant made copies of everything. The retainer agreement was way more than my family could afford, but he said we could work out a payment plan after the case settled. My mom had to sign too since I was still a minor, and her hands shook when she wrote her name. Gray's office walls were covered with newspaper clippings about cases he'd won, and I counted 12 involving schools while he talked about discovery procedures and depositions. He said having 15 witnesses who saw everything made this stronger than most negligence cases he'd handled. The school announced Tommy's vigil 3 days later, and everyone had to walk to the football field during fifth period. They set up a microphone at the 50-yard line, and kids took turns talking about what a good friend he was. When this sophomore mentioned how Tommy spent his last week scared about losing more of his sight, I had to walk away. My chest felt so tight I couldn't breathe, and I ended up throwing up behind the bleachers while everyone else stayed to light candles. Daniel followed me and started saying he never meant to hurt me when everything happened in the classroom. I turned around and told him that calling me dramatic while I was dying was something I'd never forgive. He just stood there with his mouth open as I walked back toward the parking lot without letting him say another word. Gray called me that afternoon to say he'd filed official records requests with the district for Miss Blade's training certificates and any emails about the incident. The district had 30 days to respond, but he warned they'd probably claim some documents were missing or hadn't been kept properly. Gordon Bowles from the district scheduled an interview with me the next week, and Gray insisted on being there as my lawyer. Gordon kept trying to make it sound like Miss Blade was just one bad teacher instead of asking about the locked cabinet or Mr. Peterson walking away. I made sure to mention both things 3 times while Gordon typed notes on his laptop and avoided eye contact. Meanwhile, Jasper Beckwith was interviewing students, and Katie told me he'd talked to 5 kids separately about what happened. He showed Katie a timeline he was building that proved how many chances adults had to stop this from happening. She said he looked really upset when she described Tommy crying about going blind and how scared he'd been those last few weeks. Detective Boudreaux called while I was doing homework to update me on the criminal investigation. The DA was looking at charging Miss Blade with false imprisonment and reckless child endangerment based on the evidence. He said having 2 students with severe reactions and Tommy's death made the case much stronger than if it was just me. My next therapy appointment with Emmett Bloom focused on my anger and how it was eating me up inside. He helped me see that destroying Miss Blade wasn't the real goal, but stopping her from ever hurting another kid was. It felt better thinking about it that way, even though the rage still burned in my stomach every night. Gray tried getting the hallway security footage that would show Mr. Peterson walking away, but the school said it was under legal hold. He actually smiled when he told me this was good because now they couldn't delete it or claim the cameras weren't working. The next morning, he sent official preservation letters to both the district and the substitute teacher agency by certified mail. These letters legally required them to keep all documents about Miss Blade, including training records and previous complaints from other schools. He explained that companies sometimes lose important papers right before trials, but now they'd face criminal charges if anything disappeared. That same week, the local paper ran an op-ed that made my blood boil. The writer called our whole situation moral panic and said Miss Blade was just a victim of helicopter parents who coddle their kids. They wrote that allergies are overblown these days, and teachers shouldn't have to deal with every little medical complaint. The online comments turned into a total war zone. Some people shared their own allergy horror stories and said Miss Blade should be in jail. Others said we were drama queens looking for attention and a payday. My mom spent hours screenshotting the worst comments for our lawyer while my dad paced around the kitchen reading them out loud. Katie's parents had to change their phone number after someone posted it online. The records request Gray filed finally came back with some interesting stuff. Miss Blade had 2 previous complaints at other schools that nobody knew about. The first one was from 3 years ago, when she wouldn't let a diabetic kid check his blood sugar. She told him he was being dramatic and seeking attention just like she told me. The kid ended up passing out and hitting his head on a desk. The second complaint was from last year at a middle school where she refused to let a girl use her inhaler during an asthma attack. The girl's parents pulled her out of school the next day and filed a complaint, but nothing ever happened. Gray made copies of everything and added them to our growing pile of evidence. Then things got worse when some idiot from our class posted on social media that Miss Blade was trying to kill us for insurance money. They said she had life insurance policies on all her students, which was completely made up and stupid. The post went viral before anyone could stop it, and suddenly we looked like crazy conspiracy theorists. Katie made them take it down, but the damage was already done. News outlets started calling us the students who cried wolf and questioning if we were making everything up. Gray had to send out a statement saying we had nothing to do with that post, and it didn't represent our actual claims. 2 days later, FedEx showed up at all our houses with thick envelopes from Miss Blade's lawyer. Why did the principal think keeping quiet was more important than a student almost dying?